All right, and we're live. Hi, everyone. My name is Cecil Phillip, and welcome to Stripe Dev Chats, where we hope to talk to you about all the cool things that are happening in the community, about Stripe, about software development, and about all the amazing things that we're going to be able to do with payment processing using the Stripe APIs. Now, today I'm joined with my teammate Charles, who is going to be talking to us about Vue.js and how we can plug Vue.js into our Stripe applications. So before we kind of dive into the topic, Charles, why don't you introduce yourself really quickly, say hi to folks, let them know who you are and what is it exactly you do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am also a developer advocate here at Stripe. I'm based in Seattle, and I do a lot of different things. But like recently, what I've been doing is like diving head first into Vue.js. I consider myself a bit more of a back-end developer, and so one of my New Year's resolutions was to familiarize myself with the front end a bit more, find a framework that I like, and like really master it. And I did like little samples of all the different ones, and the one that really like stuck with me was Vue. So I'm super excited to be talking about that today. But yeah, that's me.
Nice. And I'm a little bit of a fan of Vue.js too, so I'm definitely excited to see some of the things that you're going to be talking to us about a little bit later today. But before we go on too, I know we have a couple of folks that are in the chat hanging out with us, so I just want to give a quick shout out to all our viewers that are watching us live. If you're not watching us live, make sure you do the next time that we're on. But while you're here, let us know where it is that you're watching from. Let us know what country, what state, wherever you're calling from. Just go ahead and drop like your location inside of the chat room so we can make sure we can give you a quick shout out as we go on with the show. Now, before we keep going on with Charles's stuff, I want to do a quick highlight section because I think this is going to be really cool to talk about some of the other cool things that are happening. So I'm going to share my screen really quickly. I want to share just a couple of links about some of the cool things that have been happening in the Stripe community. Now, first off, I don't know if you've seen this news. This press release came out yesterday, but Apple announced that they're going to start accepting contactless payments on their iPhones. I think they're calling it like tap to pay or something like that. And I think that's really cool now because, I remember walking around and, you remember contractors or I don't know, like you're working with folks and you'll see them with like these little things they plug into the back of their phone, whether through USB or something like that. And then you swipe your credit card and, that was the way that they were doing mobile payments. But now it sounds like you're not going to even need to have those extensions at all. It sounds like you'll be able to just use like Apple Pay or, whatever it is that you have registered on your phone to plug into that. And I think that opens up a really interesting opportunity for us as developers to kind of plug into that ecosystem and kind of, extend the powers of our smartphone. I think this is really cool. Definitely looking forward to seeing where this goes. And of course, one of the reasons why I'm excited about it is because I think somewhere down in this article, let me go ahead and search for it really quickly. Notice it says Stripe will be the first payment platform to offer tap to pay on the iPhone. So I think that's going to be really cool for all of our Stripe developers that are looking to plug into some of this functionality. So I don't know exactly when this is coming out, but definitely stay tuned. I'm sure we'll have more news and we'll talk about this a little bit more as we go on. Next thing I want to do, I want to give a quick shout out to my other teammate, Paul. Paul did a video that's on our Stripe YouTube channel, the channel that you're watching us on right now, called Getting Started with Next.js and Stripe. And this is about 19, 20 minutes or so, where he kind of walks through like zero to application. And you could see how to scaffold out a new Next.js application, add the Stripe APIs, initialize everything, and then start accepting payments in your Next.js app. So if you're a Next.js developer, definitely make sure you check out this video. Again, it's on our Stripe developer YouTube that you're watching us on right now. And lastly, the last one I do want to talk about a little bit is the Vue Stripe documentation. Now, as a dev advocate, I always believe good open source projects documentation is so important. And they've done some really good work making sure that they have really great documentation. Totally. Charles, I don't know, maybe you're going to talk about this a little bit later today as we talk about Stripe and stuff. But I think this site looks awesome, right?
It is actually like I'm like pretty plugged into this project. Like one of the reasons I wanted to learn Vue is like I met the maintainer of this project, super cool guy, Joff Tiquez, based out in the Philippines. And he's like someone who knows a ton about Vue. And one of the things that I did was like make a small contribution to this. So actually what you're looking at right now, the Stripe payment element, that's our new UI where you can like add in all of the different payment methods. I work with Joff to like get that up and run it on this site. So yeah, this is a really cool project. Just like if anyone's interested in like making contributions to an open source project, I saw a few people in the chat. I see Thrashing Code, who also looks like he's in Seattle and also diving deep into Vue.js. If you're like interested in contributing to a really cool project with a really cool maintainer, like this is one to look at.
Yeah, as I'm just scrolling through the documentation a little bit, like it just looks so clean. Like the docs itself looks clean, but also the amount of code that it takes to start implementing Stripe payment elements also looks very, very, very clean too. So definitely super good job at like creating these samples, creating these docs. Definitely gonna look forward to diving into this some more and adding Vue to some of our Stripe applications for sure.
Totally.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's it for our highlights. I'm gonna switch back and pop over back into the chat. Like, let's see what folks have been talking about. Like, have folks dropped in their communities and stuff like that? Okay. So Thrashing Code, we here from Seattle. So shout out to you, sir. Thank you. I'm assuming you're a sir. I apologize if you're a lady. Here we have someone else here from Brazil. We have Idaho. Shout out to CJ, New England. We have folks here from Phoenix, Arizona. I love Phoenix. Hamburg, Canada. Yeah, we have folks from all over the place. So again, we all appreciate you. Thank you so much for being here. Again, every time I do a live stream, I love to shout out the folks because obviously we do this for you. The goal is hopefully we'll do some more of these live streams on this channel. So if you like what you see today, definitely let us know. Message us on Twitter. You can see my Twitter handle and also Charles's Twitter handle there. Also, you could reach out to us on the Stripe developer Twitter handle as well. But like I'm saying, like if you like the type of content that we're going to be talking about today and some of the things that we'll be doing, make sure you let us know because feedback is important, right? We need your feedback.
Totally.
All right. So that's enough yapping from me. So Charles, let's talk about you, man. Let's talk about what you came to talk about.
Yeah, totally. So I just want to quickly give a shout out to Nipo from Bordeaux. I thought for whatever reason, I thought Bordeaux was just a wine. So shout out to Nipo. That's dope. Let's see. So yeah, I am here to talk about Vue 3. I am admittedly someone who is still in the process of learning Vue 3. I guess we can just hop into the code, but like before I even do that, I just want to like throw out kind of why I decided to stick with Vue 3.
Sure.
So like I said, I'm like largely I did backend stuff. I knew HTML, I knew JavaScript, and like the cool thing that I think people are going to see is like when you work with Vue, that's all you need. It's like you don't need to be a Vue developer. You just kind of need to be like a JavaScript developer, which I think is pretty cool. But that's enough for me. Like, let's hop into the code. That sounds good, right?
Let's do it. So why don't you go ahead and share your screen, and then let's kind of dive into it.
Okay. So let me go ahead and share my screen here.
Cool.
Okay, cool. So what I have today is just a Vue 3 application that I've been toying around with. It's kind of like a mock-up of an e-commerce app. And essentially what I wanted to do was just understand, like, if I were in the shoes of a Vue developer who wanted to build out like a checkout experience, how would I go about doing that? What would it feel like? What would I learn? Things of that nature. So what I have is like really straightforward. I have a checkout, kind of like a checkout page where I'm showing essentially a summary of all the different items. And then I also have one more page that you always need in these scenarios, which is just a success page, right? So if we hop into the code, we'll be able to see a lot of the different, I think, like features and functionalities that you get when you build things with Vue. So let's go ahead and do that.
Okay, cool. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So this is my project. And it's really broken into kind of like two parts, a client and a server. Now, I know we're talking about, Vue, but to just kind of contextualize this thing that I built, it's a demo that has like a checkout experience. So like the goal of it really is like to have this page have like a payment button so that you can go to this. You can go to Stripe checkout, which is like a hosted payment page. And then from there, you can like check out and come back to the site, which is why we had that success page.
Okay.
Cool. So let's see. Where should we start? I mean, there's so many good places to start, but I really like to start from the server, if that sounds cool.
That's fine. So like right now we're looking at Visual Studio Code and your app is broken up in 2 parts. So I'm guessing you have like Express or some backend thing that's running and serving up your static assets. And then your client is completely written in Vue.js.
Yeah, totally. And that's good context. So just like you said, I got, 2 folders essentially. I got my client, that's my Vue 3 application. I got my server, and that's going to be running on Express. Server is not as important. I like Express. Some people like, I think the new hotness is Fastify. I don't know. People from the audience, I'm just curious, like what are people using on the back end?
Like I'm not a JavaScript developer. Like I can write JavaScript, but I wouldn't consider myself a JavaScript developer. But I don't know. I feel like Express is what I've seen folks use for years. I feel it's like the standard. And every time I've seen another framework, it is very Express-like. You know what I mean? So it's, I almost feel like you should just learn Express and then you have such a better experience learning some of the other ones.
I'd agree. Like the one that I've seen a lot is like Fastify, and it looks basically the exact same.
Yeah.
But I'll just like run through it for the folks who may or may not have used Express before. So what I'm doing here is, I've installed Express, so I'm instantiating it here once I require it. So that gets me my app. From here, I could add in middleware, but for my purposes, like my backend really is only going to have one job. It's going to pass in like the information that I need to like hydrate my app and like have a picture of a product and like the information related to the product. And then it's also going to like make an API call to Stripe so that I can have that hosted payment page. And you'll see that in a bit, right?
Okay.
So here, I also have like, since we're going to be using Stripe, we're using this external like API. We're going to need to authenticate our request. So I'm just requiring my .m file. And once I've done that and, I configure it, I'm not going to show you my .m file because it has my like secret keys and stuff. But once I have that all set up, I actually initialize Stripe. And so one thing that's pretty cool and neat, I think about this is that Stripe has like a Node SDK so that you don't have to write like, raw HTTP calls or anything like that. So I can just instantiate it, pass in my secret key, and now I'm like ready to make Stripe API calls.
Right. And then for folks too that might be wondering, oh, where does this API key come from? Like whenever you set up your Stripe accounts, right? Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, at the right side, there should be a tab that says developers, right? And when you click on that developer tab, you should see a section that lists all of the different keys that you're going to need to be able to like start working with the API and using your thing, using all your things.
Yeah. So you can see that here. So you got your secret key, which is what you use to make those backend API requests. And then you have your publishable key. Now I'm probably not going to use a publishable key unless we like make some changes to like do use like a hosted payment form. But the publishable key is like if you were going to use like one of the client side SDKs, like you're building a iOS or Android app, and you want to have payments there, right?
Yeah.
You want to have like a hosted payment form, you might use the publishable key with those client side SDKs. So that's kind of the difference between those two. I feel like I get that question a lot. So
I mean, I think that's a good point too, because I would be like, okay, well, I have 2 keys. Which one of these am I supposed to use? And like under what circumstances you use what? So that makes sense, right? So like you said, the secret keys for those backend ones, and it's also what you use to initialize that SDK. But a publishable key is if I'm doing anything on the front end, and front end not just being JavaScript, but also if I'm building mobile apps or anything that's user facing, that's the key I would use for SDKs that live in that space.
Totally.
Got it.
Yeah. So got my secret key, not going to show that one, super important. And then here's just an array of objects. Like this just aligns to like pretty much what you see in my demo here. So like that's just this, right? Like I got my image URL and like different information here. It comes from these objects. Cool. So in terms of my Express application, Express is super straightforward. You take your app and you just kind of pass in some functions, callbacks here. So One of them is just going to be to just like get the array of objects that I have here so I can hydrate my app. And then the other one's going to be the actual API call to Stripe. So like, so again, in this example, what we're trying to do is like build a checkout. So the first thing that we're going to have to do is really talk to Stripe. So the SDK is namespace. So you have Stripe checkout, which is the name of the product, sessions, which is the name of the API, and it's always this pattern. And then create, which is the name of which is the action, right? And so the arguments that you're passed is just an object where you pretty much just configure what you want. So there are a few things that are required and some that are not. The first is the mode, which just says, tell Stripe, like, what type of checkout form do I want? Do I want a checkout form for one-time payment or recurring payments? Line items are just the different products that you want to show up. So in my case, what I'm doing is I'm taking the array of objects that I have, and then I'm like filtering them down and return an array that just has the few properties that I need. So one of them is the price, which is a Stripe ID that reflects the product saved in Stripe, because you can save your products in Stripe and it's encouraged. And the other one's just the quantity that the customer is trying to check out with, right? So that's the line items. And then you have your success URL, which is where the customer goes when they complete the payment. Cancel URLs where they go, where they cancel the payment. And then if you want to configure additional stuff, you can pass in things like automatic tax collection or shipping address collection, any of that other stuff. But I feel like I've talked a lot about checkout, but I haven't actually like shown it to you yet. So let's just make a quick curl request to see what this looks like.
Sure. And then while you're doing that, we got a quick question coming in from YouTube. JavaScript and friends are asking, I mean, they might have just popped in here a little while ago. Are the samples discussed using Vue 3 or Vue 2?
Oh, that is a great question. So we are all on Vue 2. I'm sorry, Vue 3. We're on Vue 3. Yeah, Vue 2. I think like as of either this week.
I think it's as of yesterday.
Right? Yeah, I think so.
As of yesterday.
Yeah, so we're all on Vue 3 right now. So, okay, so I just made a quick curl, and just to show you what's happening here, I get my session, and then I'm just returning an object here, has a URL, and then the session URL. So the object is pretty big that you get from Stripe, but the only thing you really need is a URL, because that's where your short-lived checkout page is going to be. So if I click here, here's my checkout. And really, you can build this entire checkout with literally just one API call. And so you can see I have like automatic taxes, which I need to enter my address. I got my email. I have all these things. So I could do the canonical example at Stripe, which is just jennyrosen@example.com. And let's see.
And so now as you're filling out this form, pretty much what you're telling me, right, is that this form was completely generated by Stripe. Like you didn't write this form, you didn't create it, but your application, you initialized the Stripe SDK, right? And it gave you a callback. And now that callback is sending you to this hosted page where now you could be like, okay, I'm going to fill out all this stuff. And I guess for folks that are watching too, if you pay attention to the URL, you notice the URL is no longer localhost, right? It says checkout.stripe.com. One of the reasons we do that too is because to make sure that, obviously it's secure and it's compliant. And so now, you don't have to worry about like payment details hitting your server. Instead, like, they can hit our servers in a secure hosted way. And, whether it's successful or not successful, then we'll call back into your website, right? I'm guessing that's what we're going to do, right? Is that what's going to happen?
Yep. That's exactly what's going to happen. And one thing I'll just throw out, just one thing I'll throw out is like all these forms, you saw I had autocomplete. I have I have error handling here. Like if I put in a card number that couldn't possibly be right based on like, there's some type of math to it. It'll automatically show up as like invalid and stuff like that. So you get a lot of stuff for free. But once I click this button, I should be redirected to my app, to my success page.
Okay.
So, there we go. And that's really it. So let's see what we have here. So that's the server side, right? And I think now we can move on to like the main event, which I would say is very much, the client here. So
like a true front-end developer,
right? So I like this project structure. Like I would say a pretty typical Vue 3 application. You got your views or your pages, right? You have your top level component, which is just your app.view, and then you have like your components. I also, in my case, let's see, yeah, any assets that you might use, logos, etc. But Vue uses the single file component approach here. So let's just take a look at the component that's doing the majority of the work. Now, if you've used Vue 2, most of this is going to look familiar. If you haven't used Vue at all, some of this probably looks, it actually still might look fairly familiar, but I'll just break it down just generally. So Vue uses single file components. All of your stuff is in a single file, a .vue file. And the way it's generally organized is that you're going to have a template, which is where you're going to have all of your HTML. And one of the things that I really enjoy about Vue is that it's just HTML. It's not like you don't really need to learn like JSX or anything like that. Anything that, this is class. This is not class name. So that's your template. The next is going to be your JavaScript, and it's going to be in a script file, a script like in between two script tags. So here's essentially my JavaScript here. This is where I'm doing a lot of my reactivity. If I need to pull in, different utilities or different libraries, I could do it here. And then there's also a style tag. So you can do your, in my case, I'm actually using Tailwind, but if I wanted to write my own styles, I could like have a style tag and it would be here. So essentially your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript are all in one place.
Got it. Okay.
Cool. So you can see here in my template, taking a general approach of I have just like my header, which just says checkout, and then I'm actually pulling in some of those components that you saw in that component folder. So one of the components is just like my checkout summary, and that aligns to what we have here, where essentially I'm summarizing stuff. So I have my product data, which is populating all of this stuff, and it comes in from this component. Now, components can take in what's called props, and props are variables that you pass into components, and from there you have access to them, you can use them, you can render them inside of the template inside of the component. So that's that. And then my second component is just a button. Here you can see I have one prop that I'm passing in that's just like is loading, and that's going to like disable my button and add in like a nice animation if I click it. And then I also have this, I think it's called a directive in Vue. If someone in the audience knows, let me know. I think it's called a directive. Here, so essentially if someone clicks on the button, it just fires off this function here. And you don't really have to pass in like the event or anything like that here. It knows, which is pretty cool.
And so what you're passing into that directive, that's a function, right?
Yep.
That doesn't look like a variable. That looks like a function. So later down in that file, it actually looks there in line 22, you define that function that's going to call whenever that event fires off.
Yeah. So I will say that like, I think generally what people do is they put their script above their template. I don't know if it makes it harder to read or not. But for whatever reason, I like putting my template above my script.
I usually like to do that too, at least with like other frameworks that have that similar template and code kind of together in the same box. I usually see more folks have like template and then there's code. And then sometimes I'll see like sections that have like a style section. I don't know if Vue has a style section, but they'll have like inline CSS that will be defined in the component as well.
Yeah, it does. Like I could have a style section. The reason I don't have a style section, to be honest, is again more of a kind of like a back-end type of guy. So I lean very heavily on Tailwind to do literally anything with CSS, if we're being totally honest. So yeah, I can get around, but I would prefer to just use Tailwind. But here, like the script setup, this is relatively new to Vue 3. So Historically, like Vue has had like a particular way that you go about doing like reactivity and different computations and stuff like that inside of your components. It was called the Options API, and it kind of broke out your. Actually, I can probably show it to you in the docs, but it kind of breaks up how you go about how you structure the dynamic part of your application. But since Vue 3 has come out, they have this new thing called the Composition API, and to me, it feels a lot like Svelte, where it's just JavaScript, So speaking of the JavaScript, we have, what are we doing here? So we're importing our components that we use in our template. And then because we're passing in these we're doing stuff essentially. We have reactivity. We need to let Vue know what's reactive and what's not, right? We also have some things that we want to do. So we want to hydrate our app. We want to pass in data. So we also need to use what's called a lifecycle method. So I have one called on before mount. And what that does is it does something before the component is mounted.
Got it. So like before this thing hydrates or before this thing boots up and we can see it, you're going to call that on before mount, or at least you're going to define this on before mount, and the framework is going to call it. And essentially what you're doing is you're going to call that API endpoint that had the shopping cart. And you showed us that JavaScript inside of that Express.js API. And now that's just going to return that here. And it looks like it's just setting it up. Yeah, it's going to initialize it there on that variable you defined on line 13.
Yeah, totally. So that's exactly how it works, right? So the way these two things generally come together in my experience, which is essentially, let's say is loading, right? So with is loading, and this is just reactivity, is loading is something that's going to change throughout the life of my the life of my component, right? So when my component loads up, it's like it's not loading, it's not getting ready to send the user off to like Stripe checkout. It needs to wait for the user to confirm that essentially confirm that this is ready, right?
Yeah.
So I have is loading set to false, and I wrap it around this ref. And essentially what this does is tell Vue, hey, this is loading is something that's going to change. Now, one thing that I thought was super weird was that in all of the examples, when you're doing reactivity, you use a const, which you would be like, oh, this is weird. Like, does this mean that it's reactive, but I'm like setting it to be a constant? So am I not going to change it? But essentially what this does is it just like creates an object where like is loading kind of looks something like, it looks something like this. Like it's an object and it has like a value, and that value would be false. And so when you're doing reactivity inside of Vue, you're creating an object. I think the object's a proxy or something like that, and you're just really changing the value inside of it. And that's essentially how reactivity works.
So pretty much what you're saying is that even though that's constant, what you're looking at on line 12 is not a constant Boolean, but it's a constant reference to some proxy or something that like wraps the Boolean value or wraps whatever value you're passing into that ref function.
Yep, that's exactly right. And you would use ref for pretty much everything but an object. There's a different thing you use for objects. It's called reactive, I think. So,
okay, got it.
Yeah. So I'm doing that for is loading and cart, and you can actually see me doing it, right? So when I mount, before I mount the component, I'm making an API call to my backend to fetch all the items in my cart, and then I'm setting cart.value to the response that's inside of the cart, right? To the response.cart, which is that like just that array of objects that we saw earlier. So then my cart is this array of objects that I just pass into my checkout summary. And from there, checkout summary does what it needs to do so that it can, hydrate this component, and it has a nice, my pictures and my descriptions and my calculations and all that other good stuff.
Got it. Okay.
And then, finally, what we need is just kind of like the click handler, right? The handle submit. functionality here. So in our case, we need to redirect to Stripe. So this is just an asynchronous function that I defined down here. I set my is loading value to true. This disables my button, again, up here. And then I just, reach out to my backend, grab my URL, and I change the window location to the URL to do the redirect. And that's pretty much the flow. So if we go back here and we click on continue to Stripe, it should take us to our form.
Nice.
Yeah. So that's essentially how it works. How Vue 3 works, I found it to be really straightforward to use. As someone who doesn't necessarily spend a ton of time or has a history of spending a ton of time in the front end. Like for me, I did a lot of like templates, like Ginger templates and handlebars before.
So would you say like that checkout component that you have? So that's the only part, right? Like this VS checkout, that view. This is the only part that like any type of Stripe interactivities is happening. Like you're not actually using like the stripe.js file or anything. Like everything's happening in the backend. And now you're just using Vue.js to like manipulate data, right? Like it's manipulating like the product list. It's, making, backend calls to web APIs. And then now you're going to have like that URL that's going to come back for your callback. You're just refreshing the page to be like, yay, everything was great. You know what I mean? We're going to send you to this page to be like, everything was successful. And then we're going to go ahead and process your order.
Yeah, pretty much. There's that. I mean, that's it. We could refactor this to include Stripe.js. Like we could totally do that.
Well, what would be the benefit of that, right? Like, because this app looks like it's working fine. So if you were to bring in Stripe.js, what would essentially be the benefits or the reasons for us wanting to do that?
Yeah, so I think the main reason, so it depends. Like if we want to do checkout, which we're doing here. So we're doing checkout here. And if we were just doing checkout, I would say that there's not a huge reason to use Stripe.js. It's like just another dependency on your front end. Like the only thing it would do is if you use Stripe.js with checkout, let me show you what would happen actually. So I just go to server.js. When you use Stripe.js with checkout, what it does is instead of returning a URL, you return a session ID. So again, you get an object from Stripe and it includes a bunch of information. You would take the session ID, pass it to your front end, and then Stripe.js would essentially convert the session ID to a URL. But the API kind of does this for you. And in fact, the reason that we added the URL property to checkout is because so many people requested it. They were like, I don't understand. They essentially like, it would be great if I could just get the URL instead of getting the session ID and then changing it to a URL. You kind of skip a step. So I probably wouldn't use it. Some people do, but I probably wouldn't personally.
So then right here, like right there on line 59, if you could go back super quick in your side of your server.js file.
Yeah.
At that point, then, would it be possible for you to then just redirect there?
Yeah.
If you wanted to. Like, obviously, you could send the URL to the front end, and if there's other things that needed to happen, you could process that. But also, if you're like, hey, everything's great, I'm done, right? You can, instead of saying like sending that URL as like a JSON body back, I could just redirect right here because again, this is my backend, right? Like I could just send you to another place.
Yeah, you could totally do it that way as well. Like you could pass in, I think, let's see. Yeah, you could absolutely do it that way. I think the way it might look is like, I mean, I've seen it done with like forms. So like you would just set the form action to be, I guess, the URL, and then you just kind of forward them that way. Or the form action would be your backing URL, and you will return, I think, maybe a 303 redirect.
Yeah, you probably do like an res.redirect or something. I'm not sure. I'm just guessing, but there's probably like a redirect function or something like that.
Yeah,
and your browser would just do the work, right, and send it to wherever it is that it needs to go.
Yeah, so you could do it that way. You could absolutely do it that way.
Got it.
Yeah.
So questions for you. I have tons of questions. All right.
Yeah, hit me.
Because if you all have questions for Charles, go ahead and drop them in. Otherwise, I have tons of questions. Right. I have a lot of stuff I got to ask you.
Real quick though, I actually just remember one thing about the Stripe.js thing. So if you wanted to build a checkout integration that did not use a server at all, like it didn't do any server, didn't really do much server side stuff at all. Technically, you can do a client only integration with Stripe checkout, but it has like a very limited feature set because you're doing so much configuration on the client, and the client's not exactly the safest place to do certain types of things. So
sure. It's all depending on, again, like what do your scenarios look like and what you're trying to accomplish with your application. Yeah, you just have the flexibility to do it in the back end, the front end, or some hybrid, mixture of both of them if you wanted to.
Yep.
Okay, so the first question I'd want to ask you is, so I have a bunch of products, right? Cecil's awesome webstore.com, right? It doesn't really exist, but maybe I should actually buy that domain. But I have this web store, and let's say, I want to use Stripe. It looks like I don't have to connect my products to Stripe, right? Like, and I'm saying that because I'm looking at you. Hey, I just pulled this stuff out of my API that could have come from my personal database or wherever I keep like my inventory and product catalog and all of that stuff. And then I could just send it to checkout, and checkout would just show my stuff. You know what I mean? At no point in time did I have to do anything special. Not with checkout. I didn't have to do anything special when it comes to like configuring Stripe to work with products and prices and things of that nature. But if I wanted to, I could also put my products inside of Stripe as well, right? Is that a thing that I could do?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can just send in product information. You need to make sure you're passing in the raw stuff that you need.
Yeah.
But it's totally possible to essentially pass in some raw information like that. So let me switch accounts. I have so many Stripe accounts.
And the reason I'm thinking, right, because I'm thinking about all these different scenarios we might have. And like you said, like if I'm doing like this front end heavy application and I don't have a database for whatever reason, I mean, everyone has a database, but let's say for the sake of conversation, there's no product database.
Yeah.
I could have my products inside of Stripe, and I could still use that checkout hosted form. All I have to do is say like, okay, well, these are the things that I want you to charge me for. Instead of giving you the line items from my backend, I'll give you the line items from the products that came from whatever I put inside of here in Stripe. Yeah,
totally. You can absolutely do it that way. You can absolutely do it that way. I would say the only caveat is like you said, if you're doing it client side only, you will actually have to set the products and prices inside of Stripe. So like you would either use this dashboard. There's also, APIs where you would set this all up in Stripe. And from there, you can just like pass in the reference to this particular product. So there are two IDs. The product ID is the product itself. And then the price is what you actually send to Stripe when you make your API call.
Yeah.
And the main reason you pass in the ID instead of the price is like, there are different currencies out there. So you could either have a scenario where like you have to make multiple copies of the exact same product across currencies, or you can just have one product and then an identifier for the different like prices. So
that's cool. So like you said, like if I define it inside of Stripe, right? Like, so I come to my Stripe dashboard. That's what we're looking at right now. Instead of the dashboard, I'm going to click on products. I define my products, but not only can I say, hey, this is what the euro amount is, or this is what it costs in like, pesos or, Canadian money. I'm sorry, Canadian folks. I don't know what kind of money you use. Canadian money or US dollars, right? Like I can have like all of these different options underneath the same product. So does that mean that like the checkout form would do localization? So like if I'm selling to someone that's in Canada, would it just show them the Canadian price and I don't have to do anything? It just magically figures it out?
So you would have to pass in the price. So you would have to pass in the price. That being said, It does do some localization. So let me take a look. That's a really important point. Let me go back to this. Let me go back to my checkout form here. So like one thing that comes up a lot, I would say, is when you sell stuff internationally, when you sell stuff in the United States, right, or Canada, you can just be like, okay, give me your credit card number, and I'll like, there you go. You can just use a credit card. But abroad, like especially in places like Europe, people use payment methods that are not credit cards. So one type of localization that you get, in addition to the fact that you get, the fields would change, the language would change. So you can actually do that type of localization.
Yeah.
If this were Japan, this would be in like Japanese.
Sure.
In addition to that, you can also like add in different payment methods, which is pretty cool. So if I wanted to like add in, United States doesn't have that many payment methods, but if I were to reconfigure this demo to use Euro, I think I'd be able to add in more payment methods to this form, and I could do that all in the dashboard.
And then also, is my understanding, so there's the credit card payments, which is what's enabled now, and that's what we're seeing. But then I could also use like Apple Pay, Google Pay, some of those other digital wallets. I don't know if there's like Samsung Pay and Amazon Pay, and everyone has a thing, right?
Yeah,
but I'm assuming, because those also, I guess, just store credit cards, right? And they're kind of just like a proxy for you. But I'm guessing I could use some of those payment methods as well, in addition to me just like putting in my credit card information in here.
Yeah, you could. Let me see. So let me hop into settings here. So you can actually see them all here. So we got cards, you got Apple Pay, Google Pay, you got Alipay, WeChat Pay. Let me turn this one on. I feel like this one might be in the US. Yeah, this one's in the US. Let's see. You actually have a lot of different payment methods out here, and they're constantly adding them. So
okay, awesome.
Yeah. So actually, let me see something here. I wonder if I go back. So I actually did just add in a payment method. I just added in Alipay, which is in USD. So I think that if I go back
and try and refresh it or redo it, it might.
Yeah, if I make a new one, I think it might have Alipay, but I also might be on the wrong account because I have so many of them.
Sure.
Yeah. Let me see here. Actually, let me, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop sharing for a second, just a hot second.
Sure. We need to get like that security screen. So like every time you want to take your screen off, we'll just like slide over the security banner so folks can't see what you're doing.
Yeah. You know what the thing is? I'm embarrassed to admit that I only use one monitor.
What do you say?
I use literally one monitor. I have one not particularly large monitor, and I just use that for whatever reason. It's
what? I'm not gonna monitor shame you on live, right? We're not gonna do that, and we're teammates too. So I want to make sure me and you have a good relationship because we got to work together. But I'm just saying, I don't know how you work with one screen, man. Like, how does that happen? I need at least two screens. If I can get more, that's even better. But I need at least two screens in front of me.
I really need to fix my setup. It's questionable.
I gotta figure out who your boss is and give him a talking to, because we gotta sort this out, man. We gotta be doing this.
Oh man, let me hop back in here. I think I got this going.
Okay.
Yeah, even ScreenFlow is telling me this works best with two screens.
It's funny.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, even that. So let's see here. If I go back to my demo, and one thing about changing payment methods, you can add them in a dashboard, which is what I'm trying to do here. You can't refresh, like if like whatever settings your checkout session has, and like these checkout links live for like 15 minutes, it stays with that configuration. But let's see here. Hopefully I got it going. Oh, here we go.
Oh, that's awesome.
Right. So I got my card, I got Alipay, I got WeChat Pay. I can like try any one of these things. So I can go, actually, I'm gonna send this to you. So
hold on. You're sending me a women's short sleeve boat V-neck? Is that what you're sending me, dude?
Yeah. I have no idea where you live. So we can like test this payment. let's see here. It's processing, and this is like the test page that you get. So here's another thing that you learn when you deal with like global payments. Like
Mhm.
so many payment methods are like redirect based.
Yeah.
So like this is kind of, you would get some type of Alipay real page, but here it's just like kind of testing out that flow here. So
Got it.
still works.
Got it. But if this was not in test mode, I'm assuming like they would see like obviously like a authentic, secure authorization experience that they'd probably have to go through, put in some credentials, whatever those credentials happen to be, and then now that'll kick back over to where you are just now.
Yep, that's exactly right. That's exactly right. So and it depends on payment method. So I think Checkout has like 21 or something like that. 21 payment methods as of today. So it differs for each one. You use any of these European methods. They're all broadly similar. It'll basically ask you to like log into your bank account, or it'll send you like a text message, or do some type of app-based authentication. And that's essentially how that works.
All right, so looks like we have a question from YouTube. This one's coming from Rachel. Rachel is saying, how to allow users to manage their own subs? Assume this would be in the customer portal. So how do you allow users to manage their own subscriptions? Could they do that? Is that a thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see. So it would be the portal. It's the customer portal, and it works very similar to Checkout. Let me see here. I don't think you can actually do it from
in test mode.
Yeah, I don't think you can. So, but we can hack on it if you want.
Sure, let's do it. Why not?
Yeah, let's try.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah. So let's see. I don't think my customer. So let's see if we wanted to do something like that. First and foremost, we're going to need to actually have a customer with a subscription. So let's build that in the dashboard to start.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, so I'm just going to build it in the dashboard. Let's say that you have a product subscription, and for whatever reason, this might actually be a real business. Like it's a undershirt subscription. So you can, I don't know, stay fresh with undershirts.
I mean, you might do a lot of hard work. You might need a new one like every month or something.
Right? Who knows, right? So let's say it's of course, it's be standard. Okay. Another thing you can do is upsell. So hold on.
What's upselling? What's that?
Yeah. So like if you want to like add, if there's like another I think if there's like a price where like, let's say you can do it monthly, right? And it's one price. And if you do it annual, you get a better price. Then you can do it that way.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. So you can like adjust it based on whatever subscription level or whatever they select a little bit.
Yep. And that's how you upsell recurring. I think with one time, I think there's a way to, I might be making that one up. I thought there was a way to do kind of like cross sells where like you could like perhaps have like a shirt and then you also sell socks at the same time inside of like the checkout link or something like that.
So if you hit on upsells, what does it show you? Doesn't it show you the other products? No prices. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
I don't have any recurring prices. So
okay.
just they're just nothing for it. It's a fun.
Okay.
So
got it.
Let me see here. So I feel like $15 is good for a t-shirt.
I think that's fair.
Right?
Considering the current state of the economy, I think that's pretty fair.
Yeah. So actually I haven't used this one yet. So let me go ahead. I'm gonna do another one, and this one's gonna be yearly. And if you buy it yearly, you get it for the low price of $100.
Okay.
So let me see. If I go back here and I edit this, I wonder if I'll be able to upsell now. There we go.
Cool. Got it.
All right, cool. So I'm going to save that. And the next thing I'm going to have to do is actually like attach this to a customer. So I'm just going to make a customer real quick. And my customer is going to be Jane Doe. Example.com. And let's go ahead and add this customer. go to Jane, and let's add a subscription. So let's see. We're going to create a subscription here. And what is Jane doing?
Jane wants the yearly subscription.
Yeah, that makes sense, right?
Yeah, Jane's a hustler. She wants a yearly subscription.
Cool. So I'm going to just add in a payment method. I'm going to do this 4242. And if anyone in the audience can hazard a guess at why it's just 442 over and over again, I would love that.
I figured it's like some magic credit card number that people use for some reason. Is that like the credit card that it's a good card, but like you just can't, it just doesn't have any money on it?
I don't know. It's always been 4242. Someone told me it's a reference to something. But
yeah, I love to hear what folks in the audience think. Do you all know what 4242424242 what that credit card reference stands for? Like, definitely love to hear what folks think.
Yeah.
Maybe, because we're gonna do some more of these streams, right? So maybe we can make this a competition. You know,
Yeah.
Let's think about that. Like, let's see if, you know, over time, if folks get it, maybe we'll give some stuff away. I'm not promising you anything. I didn't promise to give you anything. I'm just saying maybe we could give some stuff away.
All right, cool. Let me give this customer, like, I have to give this customer all types of things. So what is it, Los Angeles?
LA.
You don't necessarily have to do all of this stuff, but
Sure.
Let's see here. Okay. All right, that should do it.
Okay, so you created the subscription. You created 2 subscriptions actually, and now you created a customer and attached the subscription inside of the customer inside of the dashboard.
Yep. So so this customer has a subscription.
Mm-hmm.
Let me see here. Is there a way for me to create a portal? Here we go. Cool. Customer portal. All right. So we can still add the button. I didn't configure it. So now I have to configure it.
Okay.
Yeah. Who asked this question? Whoever asked this question, I apologize. I was not ready for a customer portal question. I configure different things on different accounts.
But you know what? This is a live show. This is what we do when we're live, right? Like, we try things out and, you know, hopefully it doesn't break.
Yeah. Or it does. If it breaks,
it does.
So
either way, it's a learning experience, right? So it's all good.
Yeah. So while we're here, let's go through it. So if you want to use customer portal, you got to configure it. And you can configure the functionality. So every customer portal can be between accounts, can be different, right? So for your account, if you want them to be able to see their invoices, you can enable that. If you want them to be able to change their billing information or their tax ID, you can give them that. If you want to give them the opportunity to update payment methods, add in promotion codes, cancel subscriptions, et cetera, and when they can cancel subscriptions, you can do that as well. So let's see here. So again, what was the original use case for this one? Was it like
Rachel, yeah, I'll pull back up the question really quickly. So Rachel was asking how to allow users to manage their own subs, and would it be the customer portal? So and I'm guessing the answer is yes, right? Because that's kind of what you're doing. You're going to go through the customer portal to set this stuff up.
Yeah, exactly right. So we're right here is a section where they can manage their subscription. So cancellation, pause, update, changing the quantities, switching to a different price plan, like those are all things that you can do from the customer portal. So
awesome. So Rachel, definitely good question. Hopefully that answered your question. So let us know if it did or not.
Yeah. So this is what it looks like essentially. You can cancel, you can add and remove payment methods, and you can see how often they've been billed. So Rachel here has really been buying these t-shirts. So that's the customer portal. But great question. Absolutely great question. Perhaps like we can do that one on another stream. So
Rachel's saying, so let me ask you this then. Could you, in your application, right? Like, I'm guessing you'll have like a user section or a settings section or something of the sort. Does that mean that you could click it and then now I'll just redirect to this portal, right? Like I could consume this via an API. I could write some code. I could get this URL for the customer portal, and then just like send them to the place where they can do a lot of this work.
Yeah, totally. It would be more or less the exact same flow that you have with create checkout session. So if you want to just kind of return a URL, you can. If you want to just redirect them, you can. Like in this case, when it comes to like subscriptions, and things like that, of course you want to put it behind auth, but at a high level, it would not be very different from what you have here. It would just be like a endpoint that has, they need to be logged in, right? And they click the button, you make the API call, you redirect them. It'll have all of the information related to that particular customer. So really, there are two objects, right? To this use case, you would have like your first, you would have your customer, right? You need the customer ID, which identifies the customer, right? And then, so in that case, let's see here. I'll just leave this for now, right? So we would get our customer ID, and in general, you're going to save your customer ID somewhere in a database for certain. You don't need to save everything you get from Stripe, but you should definitely save your customer IDs and your prices, right? So you would get your customer ID, right? And from a code perspective, it would be you get your customer ID, and then you're going to use that customer ID when you make your API call to the customer portal API. And that would be it.
Okay. So other than like you, so I'm just trying to make sure we get the steps right. So you went into customer portal. I'm sorry, you went into dashboard, created the customer, configured with the recurring payments and subscriptions and things of that nature. Went into actions, right? And then you created or you opened up the customer portal. Right. And then there you go. It says you need to configure some things. You configured it, but then once it's configured, the customer portal is now usable, right? Like you could. Okay. The reason I'm asking because I'm just trying to. Because I'm looking at Rachel. Rachel, I'm sorry. I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. And Rachel's saying he configured it in the dashboard. There are additional steps. So I'm just trying to make sure. Are there more things that users need to do to pass off this customer portal to our customers? Or is it once we have it configured, all we have to do is, like you said, call that API endpoint and then just give them the URL to go to?
Yeah, once you have it configured, and I'll just be frank, I haven't used the customer portal in a minute, so it's changed since I last used it. But once you've configured it, it's mostly a matter of ensuring that you're able to get your customer ID, ensuring that it's it's behind a login, and then redirecting the customer so they can take the proper actions.
So then really the only code that you would have to write after you've followed the steps that you've showed, like you said, are like calling that API, handing over that URL to the customer, and then redirecting them to that new location so that they themselves could look at their history and click on things. Yeah,
that's exactly right.
Okay. Rachel's asking if you could show us the code.
I'll show you the code right now. I know Stripe, but I don't know Stripe that well.
Well, how about we do this?
Well enough to write it.
Can we go to the docs?
Yeah, totally.
Let's go to the docs site. So there should be the Stripe API docs. Let's take a look and see what that looks like super quick. Also, too, we're running a little low on time. I think we got like 10 minutes. So let's take a look at this really quickly.
Yeah, it flies.
Let's see what this looks like.
Yeah, so let's just talk about integrating the customer portal. And thankfully, we have an integration guide here. So let's see here. Where should we get started? So let's just go to the implement redirect. And legitimately, it's very, very similar to checkout, right? So this is actually how I was thinking about how Cecil, you said we could just do a redirect.
Could you zoom in a little bit because the docs is a little far?
Oh yeah, let me zoom in.
Yeah, like Control plus that a couple times.
Yeah, here we go.
Yeah, there you go.
Better. Perfect. So you would implement a redirect, right? So first thing you need to do is configure the portal, which I did not do ahead of time. But you would, on your front end, you would have a form or some type of redirect. Maybe you're using the directive or what have you. You would make a API call to your backend, your cloud function, whatever. When someone submits the form, or clicks the button. And essentially what you'll have on your back end, and this is also Express, is an endpoint where you are creating you're making a single, API call to Stripe, again, namespace. So billing portal, sessions create, you pass in a customer, like I mentioned before. And then you pass in a return URL, because after they do what they need to do, they need to go back to your site. So you configure that here, and then you just redirect the user, or essentially you redirect the user, and that's the entire integration. From there, you just need to listen to webhooks, because you would want to listen to webhooks to make any updates, and whatever databases can control the provisioning of your services. If it's like something that people like sign up for, like if I don't know, you had something like Netflix or courses that you sold that were behind a login or something like that. So
yeah, so kind of like you said, like, so if I was your customer, I went to the customer portal and I changed some things, right? Like I could, like on your side, you'd listen to the webhook, maybe it says subscription created, canceled, updated, whatever, like things happened, right? And you listen to those things, like using events through the webhooks, and then now on your backends, you could change whatever you need to change. You can adjust your business to handle, whatever updates you've chosen to make.
Exactly. So if, you go from like premium to regular or something like that, that's something that you would want to, you need to update that. And the way you would do that is with webhooks. You look and you inspect the event, the payload that comes with the webhook event, and then you do what you need to do based on that.
Okay. Got it. Cool. Yeah. Charles, this has been awesome, man. Do you have any closing links, things you want to share, stuff you want to tell folks before we call it?
Yeah, totally. Two things. One, if you're interested in integrating Vue, I talked about like using just like the Stripe SDKs on Express. But if you want to use Vue inside, if you want to use Stripe with Vue, if you want to use Stripe with Nuxt, you can use Vue Stripe. Vue Stripe's a really cool project. Like I said, it handles a variety of use cases. So you can do recurring subscriptions. You can generate checkout sessions. You can build your own payment like form if you wanted to, using the payment element, which you see here. Right now it's written in Vue 2. They're doing a transition to Vue 3. So if you're interested in getting involved with a project, definitely check this out. And then also we have a bunch of videos on a variety of different topics. I do believe we have a video on the customer portal. So definitely check out the Stripe Dev YouTube channel, where you can see us like running through these different Stripe integrations. So
awesome. And like we said before, like this is a reboot of our Dev Chat series. The goal is we want to do these like every other week. If you guys really like it, we'll do them every week, but you got to let us know. You got to give us some feedback. Let us know about topics you'd like us to talk about, people you'd like us to show, new projects and things of that nature. And we'll try our best to facilitate that for you, for having these really interesting conversations. But hopefully you folks liked it. Hopefully you all enjoyed what we've been doing so far. Rachel, if we have not answered your questions, please DM Charles and I. You can see our Twitter handles there at the bottom. Feel free to reach out to us. And we could set up some time to talk to you and try and sort out any of the questions you have, in case we weren't able to do it right here live in the show. I feel like we didn't answer your question, so I want to make sure that we take the time to properly understand and give you the answers you need to be able to be successful. But again, that being said, thank you all for being here. I really appreciate you. Charles, thank you so much for the demos. This has been great. And this has been Stripe Dev Chats. So see you all on, the next one's going to be on the 23rd, right? Who are we having on the 23rd, Charles? Do you remember?
Oh man, who are we having on the 20th? We are having
Jerome. I think we're doing Jerome, right?
I think it's Jesse Martin from Hashura.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go.
So right. If you're into GraphQL APIs, definitely join that one. You're gonna learn some pretty cool stuff. It's an awesome service, Hashura. So
yes, sir. So come back on the 23rd. We'll have the links and things of that, things like that ready. But again, thank you all so much. Appreciate it. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.